Let's continue the conversation around Reconciliation Day, a public holiday here in South Africa that's aimed at fostering reconciliation and national unity. It was previously known as the Day of the Vow or Dingaan's Day, and it marked a victory by the four trekkers over the Zulus in the Battle of Blood River. Now, after the end of apartheid, December 16 became a celebration for the end of apartheid and, in particular, promoting unity between the country's racially diverse groups. Now, the country's first democratic government was tasked with promoting reconciliation and national unity. Now, the real question now is how far has our country come? Joining me for this conversation is the South African Council of Churches General Secretary, Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana, who has kindly stopped on the side of the road to talk to us. Bishop Mpumlwana, thank you very much. We're not going to keep you for long. And I want to pick up, Bishop, on the back of the address that we heard a little earlier from the ministers of the security cluster, who are mostly worried about stability in the country on the back of what we saw in July. You were vocal as members of the clergy, as you were during the days of apartheid. On a day like this, when we are supposed to be observing and promoting unity, there are worries about not just the safety of human beings, but the possible impact on the economy should people decide that they are going to be angered by a decision taken yesterday by the court to say the release of former President Jacob Zuma on medical parole was unlawful. What would your message be this time around to those who are plotting acts of violence?
Well, I think that, Coley, we do need to be a society that takes our institutions seriously. Because if our institutions are going to be governed by what Malusi wants, by what Coley wants, and there are so as many Coleys in South Africa as is the population, then there is going to be we shall not have any stability at all. If everybody makes their demands according to their will, and that's the way life must, depending on how much muscle you can garner up, it's never going to be a stable society. All I can say is, but let us, whatever our grievances, use the law and make sure that the law functions for us. And that's really all I can say, that we need to be a law-abiding society and where the rule of law actually reigns supreme. And that's the only way you can have such a diversity of people to come together, only by the referee, that is the law. Yeah. And I think that anyone that goes outside the law is actually defining themselves out of the really what you call South Africa.
Bishop Mpumlwana, I did paint a brief picture of what this day is all about and where it comes from. When it comes to unity in the country, in particular the issue around race relations, where are we? What is your assessment?
Totally, this day was, as you said earlier, previously referred to as Dingaan's Day. Why was it called Dingaan's Day? It basically means it's a day of celebrating the death of King Dingaan. And then it then got called the Day of the Vow. And the vow was, if you give us the victory, we shall worship you. And where did that lead us? It led us to a constitutional framework in South Africa that was called a Christian constitution, whose foundations were to deny anyone that looks like Dingaan any right. And that's the fountain of apartheid. And so when we call it a day of reconciliation, it is not just about naming it reconciliation. It is about actually working to reconcile society in a systemic and programmatic way. And naming this Day of Reconciliation doesn't make it a Day of Reconciliation. People don't reconcile because they've given a title to a day. When all our mindsets are still where they were, think again that this is also the day on which the African National Congress launched Umkhonto weSizwe. Again, it's a response to the Dingans Day mindset. And those images have not gone away from our minds. We have not, therefore, begun to do what belongs to this day, to reconcile. And I heard the clip from Dr. Ramkile, and I hear her saying we should use an Ubuntu framework. And then you see, an Ubuntu framework assumes that you are as worthy as I am. And that's why it says, I am because you are.
Yeah.
But to do that, you need to look at a whole range of things. The economic opportunities, the personal development opportunities. I mean, this is the reason why on this day in 2015, the leaders of the churches launched what they call the South Africa Will Pray For. And what did they say that looks like? They said it must be a just, a reconciled, a peaceful, and equitable and sustainable South Africa that is free of racism, of tribalism, of xenophobia, and of gender prejudices, free of corruption and deprivation, with food and shelter for all, and every child born to grow to its God-given potential. And if you look at the children right now, they don't have that. How are we going to reconcile poverty with obscene wealth?
Yeah. Bishop Mpumlwana, perhaps to end our conversation, modern-day South Africa suffers from a number of ills, and one of them you've actually mentioned now, poverty. Another person will say inequality. But perhaps over the last 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic, what also has stood out more prominently is the scourge of gender-based violence and the abuse towards children. The church, what contributions can you make? What contributions have you made towards the eradication of this terrible ill?
You're asking me this question on a Thursday, when the churches under the World Council of Churches worldwide, particularly in South Africa, the Council of Churches, are committing to Thursday in Black, which is a reminder of our commitment towards a world without rape and violence. And of course, we can only have limited contributions to this, but it is actually a societal problem. And we have developed now, because it's precisely because of the COVID time, but we found as part of our pastoral care, we found that there was greater violence. You know why? Because at the beginning of the lockdown, you found that this man has never been at the same space with his wife for so long, forced by circumstances. He doesn't have his tobacco, he doesn't have his liquor, he doesn't have his sport, he doesn't have his friends, he doesn't have money, and he takes it all out on the woman. And even though the government has got systems, these 800 numbers you can call, we found that if you have got this abuser in the house, you can't make that call. And therefore you need another facility that you can use. We have piloted on a small scale with the creation of what we call the local ecumenical action networks, getting 10 to 15 churches in one locality. So that one of the things they do is to create a family support system unit that will then, that's a number that at least a person can walk up to say, I need help. And those then can then refer the matter to the governmental systems. And we've now created a WhatsApp platform that it's going to be both for corruption and gender-based violence. That if you dial the number and it leads you to a link that then you can report, and we're working to link this to the social development system that already is functional, so that anywhere and everywhere in the country, any woman, child, or anybody that's abused can be able to link into it. And we're doing that with corruption as well, so that we can have we have worked now to develop a system of lawyers that will depose any report, such a report, and then the report take it through to the NPA, and we have made at least those agreements with the NPA as well, that they will receive this kind of communication. So it's limited in small ways, but I think we need to recognize that part of the problem is our theology, the way we look at male and female relationships in the church and in our culture. And those need to be addressed much more vigorously so that we recognize that, in fact, in the Christian faith, men and women are equally heirs of the kingdom of God together with Christ. I mean, how significant can that be? Mm-hmm. It cannot be that because Malusi is a man, and therefore he's got, before God, a greater value than his wife, his daughter, or his mother. And because they're all created with the same value before Christ of being the co-heirs with Christ. So I think that there's a lot of work to be done, but we're doing our little bit.
General Secretary of the South African Council of Churches, Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana, thank you very much for your time and your contribution on this day.